Dear friends, welcome to the Elderly Advice channel. In this world, there are paths that seem smooth and serene, but once you set foot on them, you realize you've stumbled into an abyss. There are ways of aging that appear peaceful and secure on the surface, but beneath they are a living hell, a humiliating existence worse than death itself. Today, I earnestly implore you to listen to this story in its entirety. Never choose the way of life. I'm about to describe for it is a fatal mistake, a slippery slope with no way back. A serene old age requires not just money, but courage and wisdom to protect your dignity in your final years. What is this mistake, and how can you avoid falling into its trap? Join me as we delve into a true story, one that is heartbreaking yet brimming with sobering lessons. And please don't forget to support us by subscribing to our channel, liking this content, and sharing it with those who need to hear it. Leave your comments, suggestions, or share your own experiences so we can inspire each other to navigate the later years with grace and strength. Mr. John Harper, 76 years old, was a kind-hearted man with a gentle smile who spent his entire life as a clerk for the local government in Willow Creek, a small town in the American Midwest. His face, etched with the deep lines of time, held eyes that still sparkled, as if carrying the weight of a lifetime of dedication. He had 2 sons, Michael and David, both married with families of their own. Through years of frugality, he had saved a modest sum, supplemented by a monthly pension of $2,000, just enough to scrape by. When his wife Mary succumbed to cancer, their old wooden house on the outskirts of town became a terrifying void. At night, the steady whir of the ceiling fan mingled with the chirping of crickets in the garden, but nothing could fill the emptiness in his heart. He would sit by Mary's framed photograph, whispering words to no one. "You're gone. My love." How am I supposed to go on? Michael, his eldest son, Sal, a banker in Chicago, saw his father wasting away with every visit home. The kitchen was cold, the meals sparse, stale bread, wilted salad, or cheap canned fish. Mr. John, once a towering figure of strength, now sat quietly by the fireplace, his gaze lost in the peeling walls. Michael couldn't bear it. He discussed with his wife Sarah the idea of bringing his father to live with them. "He's my father," Michael said, his voice choking. "Leaving him like this, it's like watching him wait for death." Sarah, with her blonde hair tied neatly and sharp eyes, pressed her lips together. She didn't object, but a fleeting glance revealed her reluctance. Still, Mr. John packed his belongings, a battered suitcase, a few folded clothes, a bottle of blood pressure pills, and a cherished family album filled with faded photos. He boarded a bus to Chicago, his heart kindled, with a simple hope to grow old, surrounded by the laughter of his grandchildren, the warmth of family. What could be more fulfilling? At first, life in Michael's home felt like a quiet dream. Mr. John rose early, pedaling his grandson Tommy to school on an old bicycle. He swept the apartment until it gleamed cooked simple meals, bean soup spaghetti with tomato sauce or fragrant toasted bread. He shared stories of his youth with Tommy, tales of fishing by the river, sparking giggles from the boy. Michael watched his father, his heart warmed. Dad's still strong. This will work out. But the dream was fleeting. Cracks began to appear, small but sharp as knives. "Mr. John gently chided Tommy for spending too much time on his phone, earning a sulky "Grandpa doesn't get it." He suggested turning off the heater when the weather was mild to save a few dollars on the electric bill. Sarah snapped, "You don't need to worry about our finances." Once he misplaced dishes in the dishwasher, not following Sarah's meticulous system. She sighed, her eyes screaming, "You're useless." Mr. John felt the shift like a cold draft slipping through a cracked window. Sarah no longer smiled at his stories. Dinners grew silent, punctuated only by the clink of forks against plates. He tried to do more, washing the car, fixing a leaky pipe, but every effort seemed to deepen Sarah's irritation. The breaking point came one fateful evening. During dinner, Mr. John's hand trembled, and he dropped a bowl of potato soup. The hot liquid splattered across the table, soaking Tommy's school uniform. The boy shrieked, "You ruined my shirt!" Sarah shot to her feet, her eyes blazing. "You're old and everything you do is so slow," she said, her voice icy, each word a dagger to his heart. "If you're here, let us handle things. Keep going like this, and no one can live with you." The table fell deathly silent. Tommy buried his face in his phone. Michael, always the strong one, said nothing. his eyes averted mechanically picking at his food, as if deaf to the outburst. Mr. John's chest tightened. It wasn't the soup. It was the way he had been reduced to a broken, unwanted thing, a burden no one desired. He wanted to scream to explain, but his throat burned with unshed tears. Wordlessly, he stood, cleaned the floor, and retreated to his room, shutting the door softly behind him. That night, he sat by the window, the flickering city lights blurring before his eyes. He flipped through the old album pictures of Michael and David, as boys racing through the garden, Mary smiling beside him on their wedding day. Those smiles felt like relics of another life, he whispered to himself. What did I do wrong? I only wanted to belong. Then came the conversation that shattered him. Late at night, fetching a glass of water, he paused by Michael and Sarah's bedroom door, ajar just enough to let her voice slip through. Low but cutting. Having him here makes this house suffocating. He's not even sick. Why not gently suggest he goes back to the country? Michael was silent. Then in a small voice, as if convincing himself, just bear with it a little longer. He doesn't have much time left. The words hit like a sledgehammer. Mr. John stood frozen, his breath caught. Not anger, not shock, just a deep searing pain as if his heart had been torn apart. He returned to his room, collapsing onto the bed, his trembling hands clutching the album. That night he didn't cry, but his eyes were dry as if every tear had been wrung from him. The next morning he acted. At dawn, with the sky still cloaked in mist, he packed his things, the old suitcase, the pills, the notebook of friends' addresses, the album. He left a brief note. Thank you for letting me stay. I'm going home. Don't worry. No one stopped him. Tommy stayed glued to his phone, not sparing a glance. Sarah stood in the kitchen, her eyes flicking toward him before turning away as if he were invisible. Michael, tying his shoes for work, mumbled, "Why don't you stay a bit longer before you go?" The words were hollow, a formality. Mr. John offered a faint smile, shook his head, and pulled his suitcase to the door. As the bus rolled out of Chicago, he stared out the window, his heart empty. Michael's apartment faded into the distance. A dream reduced to ashes, back in Willow Creek, Mr. John returned to his wooden house. He tended the garden, planting daisies and tomatoes, but each night loneliness crept in like an uninvited guest. He played the radio, old country songs filling the air, but they only deepened his longing for Mary. Then one day, David, his youngest son, a factory worker living nearby, called, learning of his father's sorrow in Chicago. David pleaded, "Come, live with us, Dad. Our apartment's small, but it's better than you being alone." Mr. John hesitated. David and his wife Emily lived in a cramped 40-square-meter apartment with their 2 young children, Lily and Ben. They worked tirelessly, their meager wages barely covering rent, school fees, and groceries. Adding him would only pile on their burdens. "I don't want to trouble you," he said, his voice trembling. "No trouble, Dad." David insisted, his tone resolute. "I won't let you live like a shadow anymore." Those words were a flicker of warmth in his frozen heart. He agreed, packing his things, carrying a fragile hope not to be cared for, but to live in the embrace of family. In David's apartment, life was simple but heartfelt. Emily greeted him with a genuine smile, though her eyes bore the dark circles of exhaustion. She cooked modest meals, potato soup, roasted chicken sandwiches, but always saved the best portion for him. Lily and Ben clung to him, begging for stories of his hunting trips from years past. Mr. John felt alive again, as if he still mattered, still belonged. But reality's harsh edges soon resurfaced. Rent bills and school fees weighed heavily on David and Emily. Mr. John's pension helped, but every dollar he spent felt like something stolen from his grandchildren. One night, the nightmare returned, fetching water from the kitchen. He overheard David and Emily through the thin bedroom door, Emily's voice quivering with fatigue. "I can't keep up. Work, the kids, and now Dad. If he gets sick, where will we find the money?" David sighed. "I know, but he's all we've got. I can't let him be alone again." The words cut, not because they wounded, but because they revealed the truth. Even in Emily's kindness, he was a silent burden, an unspoken shadow in their cramped world. The next day, Emily snapped when Lily spilled milk, then sighed when Mr. John forgot to turn off the kitchen light. She wasn't cruel, but her weary glances pierced him like 1,000 needles. He understood love couldn't erase the strain of survival. He couldn't demand their sacrifice forever. Mr. John made his final choice. One early morning, he quietly packed his things. He left a letter. "David, Emily, thank you for everything. I don't want to be a burden. I'm going home to live my life with love. Dad. Emily wept when she read it, but he was already gone. David raced to the bus station, but only caught the fading silhouette of the bus. Back in Willow Creek, Mr. John embraced a new life, not one forced upon him, but one he chose. He hired a neighbor to cook lunch, prepared light dinners of bread and soup himself. Each morning he watered his plants, listened to the radio, and did gentle exercises. He joined a senior club, swapping stories with new friends. Loneliness visited at times, but it was no longer an enemy. It was a companion, the price of freedom. One day, David and Emily came to visit, bringing Lily and Ben. They hugged him, apologizing for making him feel like a burden. He smiled, ruffling his grandchildren's hair. "It's all right. I chose this life so you could live yours, and so I could keep my pride." In the sunlit garden, Mr. John realized a simple, profound truth. The elderly don't fear solitude. They fear being a burden. Relying on others brings suffering. Standing alone, even in silence, is how you keep your heart whole. Dear friends, Mr. John's mistake is not unique. Countless elderly people fall into this silent trap, choosing to endure, to please, to suffer, in exchange for an old age leaning on their children. But in truth, it's the most painful way to live. It's a life where death might seem kinder. So what should we do when our children, daughters-in-law, or sons-in-law show disrespect? Here are 4 principles to engrave in your heart for a life of freedom and dignity in old age. 1. Disregard them, treat them as strangers. When you're seen as surplus in your own family, don't expect genuine affection from those who no longer offer you basic respect. Don't fool yourself with the notion of family. Sometimes family is just a hollow shell, cold and empty. Dignity is the final fortress of your character. Don't trade it for superficial pleasantries or reluctant meals, as the ancients said. Guard your own self. No one is responsible for protecting your pride, but you. If your daughter-in-law speaks harshly, treat her words like street noise. If your son-in-law's gaze is cold, turn away, not out of weakness, but because they're not worth your concern. Let go and your heart will lighten. Expect nothing and you'll never be disappointed. Don't argue. Silence is your strength. Silence isn't fear. It's the wisdom of knowing that arguing with those who refuse to understand you is like tearing apart your own peace in your final years. When your daughter-in-law sneers, "You're old and always meddling," or your son-in-law grumbles, always complaining while living under our roof, you could retort, "But is it worth it?" Silence is a shield for your pride. Silence is the weapon of someone who's seen through life's illusions. The louder they shout, the calmer you remain. Because you know silence isn't weakness, it's how you preserve your dignity amid hollow noise. Remember, only the truly strong can stay serene in the face of ingratitude. 3. Don't complain. Keeping face is keeping your character. The wise don't air their wounds for others to gawk at. Family troubles stay behind closed doors. Spreading your sorrows to neighbors or relatives won't bring sympathy. It brings pitying stares and gossip whispered behind your back. They may pity you once, but they'll mock you tenfold. Complaining diminishes you in others' eyes. Enduring with grace elevates you in your own. When neighbors ask, "Why do you seem so down?" simply smile, "I'm old, just lost in thought." Preserve your dignity, not for your children, but for yourself. 4. Don't rely. Self-reliance is self-respect. In this life, the only person you can truly trust is yourself. Don't hand over your pension, your property, or anything you've toiled a lifetime to earn. Not out of fear of betrayal, but to maintain control. A person with means speaks softly, yet resounds. A dependent, no matter how loudly they shout, fades into silence. If your children suggest, "Give us your pension for shared expenses," be firm, yet gentle. "I'm used to managing. I'll keep it for emergencies so I won't burden you." Let no one dictate your life. Let no one define your worth. Age doesn't mean weakness. Aging with independence is wisdom. Aging with self-reliance is true maturity. Dear friends, old age may slow your steps, but your dignity must never fade. Remember, live so no one pities you, and die so no one curses you in silence. Choose to age with courage, wisdom, and self-respect. So, when you close your eyes for the final time, you can smile and say, "My life was worth living." We'll meet again in the next stories on Elderly Advice. I'm your old friend, always here to share tales and listen.